Have you ever felt this? Everything in your life looks fine. No major problem, no visible crisis. And yet, you wake up tired. Not physically, mentally. You don't know exactly what is wrong. You only know that something is missing. This story begins right there. More than 2,500 years ago, around the 6th century BCE, a young man lived a life that most people today would envy. Safety, status, respect, comfort. He did not struggle for food. He did not fear tomorrow. He did not worry about survival. His name was Siddhartha Gautama, and paradoxically, his problem was not suffering. His problem was comfort. He was born into the ruling family of the Sakya Republic, a society that valued order, discipline, and duty. Decisions were taken in councils. Authority was inherited. Stability mattered more than questioning. From childhood, Siddhartha was trained to fit perfectly into this system. He learned what to think, how to behave, what was considered normal, and most importantly, he learned what not to question. But something strange happened. Siddhartha paid attention. When he visited his father's lands, he saw farmers working under the sun, bodies bent, hands rough, lives predictable. They worked endlessly, while others enjoyed the fruits of that work. Nobody called this unfair. They called it destiny. This is how society functions. This is their role. This is order. These explanations were calm, polite, confident, and that's why they were powerful. Because when injustice is explained gently, the mind stops resisting. Siddhartha felt uneasy, not angry, not rebellious, just unconvinced. He asked questions that made people uncomfortable. Why should one man live easily because another suffers? Who decided this arrangement? And why is questioning it considered wrong? The answers were always the same: rehearsed, inherited, unquestioned. At some point, people stopped answering him seriously. They started worrying about him instead. Here's something important. Siddhartha was not ignorant. He was educated. He studied philosophy, language, debate, discipline. He understood the logic behind traditions. He knew how power justified itself, which meant his doubts were not emotional. They were informed, and informed doubt is dangerous. As he grew older, expectations tightened around him. He belonged to the warrior class. Hunting was considered training. Violence was framed as responsibility. Killing was explained as protection. Siddhartha refused to hunt, not because he was weak, not because he was afraid, but because he asked a question no one wanted to explore. How can killing become a duty just because society needs it? People didn't argue with him. They dismissed him. That's how the world works. That's reality. That's adulthood. This is how societies deal with uncomfortable thinkers. They don't crush them immediately. They normalize them into silence. When questioning didn't stop, a different strategy was used. Distraction. 3 palaces were built for Siddhartha, one for summer, one for winter, one for the rainy season. Gardens, music, pleasure, beauty, entertainment. The logic was simple. If a mind is restless, don't answer it. Occupy it. This logic still exists today. When people feel empty, we give them more entertainment, more consumption, more stimulation, not to make them fulfilled, but to keep them distracted enough not to ask deeper questions. For a while, Siddhartha lived exactly as expected. Marriage, luxury, comfort, status. From the outside, it looked like success. From the inside, the restlessness grew sharper. Because comfort without meaning does not calm the mind. It numbs it, and numbness eventually turns into emptiness. Much later, Siddhartha would name this feeling Dukkha. Not suffering, not pain, not tragedy, but a quiet dissatisfaction that lingers even when life looks perfect. Dukkha is what happens when the brain realizes something uncomfortable. Pleasure solves nothing permanently. You eat, hunger returns. You achieve, desire grows. You distract, emptiness waits. The cycle never ends. And Siddhartha saw this cycle before it consumed him. This is where his real journey began. Not when he saw death, not when he saw sickness, but when he realized, if this is the best society can offer, then the problem is not lack of comfort. The problem is how the human mind is trapped inside endless wanting. That realization changes a person, because once you see that the problem is internal, external solutions stop satisfying you. Siddhartha had not rejected society yet, but he had stopped believing its promises. And when belief collapses, only two options remain: either silence the question or follow it, even if it costs everything familiar. When a person starts questioning quietly, society doesn't panic. It panics later. At first it smiles, it advises, it explains. But when the questions don't stop, when comfort fails, pleasure fails, and silence fails, then society reveals its real fear. Because a questioning mind is not dangerous by violence, it is dangerous by example. Siddhartha's family did not see him as rebellious, they saw him as unfinished. He has everything, they said, so why is he still restless? And that question itself made them uncomfortable. Because if someone can be unhappy even after getting everything society promises, then maybe the promises are hollow. And no system wants that thought to spread. So pressure replaced persuasion. Duty was emphasized. You are a son. You are a husband. You are a future leader. Each role came with expectation. Each expectation came with guilt. This is how control often works, not through chains but through responsibility framed as obligation. Here's something modern psychology understands very well. The human brain is deeply social. It fears exclusion more than pain. So when society says, if you don't behave like us, you don't belong, most people surrender. They don't change because they are convinced. They change because they are afraid of being alone. Siddhartha felt this pressure, but something inside him resisted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just firmly. The more society tried to pull him back into roles, the more clearly he saw the pattern. Pleasure was not freedom, duty was not meaning, obedience was not peace. Everything around him demanded adjustment, but nothing addressed the root question. Why does the human mind remain dissatisfied even when its desires are fulfilled? No one wanted to go there. Because once you ask that question, religion, tradition, power, and identity all start trembling. This is the moment where most stories talk about miracles. We won't. Because nothing supernatural happened here. What happened was far more uncomfortable. Siddhartha observed himself. He watched how desire arose, how pleasure faded, how attachment created fear, how fear demanded control. And slowly, a realization formed. The problem is not the world. The problem is how the mind reacts to the world. This was not enlightenment. This was clarity beginning. And clarity is dangerous, because clarity doesn't allow compromise. Once you see a pattern clearly, you can't unsee it. You can distract yourself, you can delay action, but you cannot genuinely go back to pretending. Siddhartha reached that point. At this stage, he still hadn't left anything physically, but mentally, he was already outside the palace, outside expectations, outside promises, outside fear. And that is the most frightening place for society, because a person who is mentally free cannot be controlled by reward or punishment. Soon, the pressure would intensify. Advice would turn into warning. Concern would turn into anxiety. Love would turn into control. And Siddhartha would be forced to make a decision, not between palace and forest, but between comfort with dishonesty and uncertainty with truth. This is where we pause, because this is not just Siddhartha's story. This is the moment many people reach today, in careers, relationships, beliefs, and identities. That quiet realization, greater than something about the way I'm living is not honest anymore. What you do after that realization defines the rest of your life. If this video made you uncomfortable, that's not a bad sign. It means you're listening honestly. If you've ever felt restless without knowing why, or successful without feeling fulfilled, then this series is for you. Like this video so this conversation can reach others who feel the same but don't have the words yet. Subscribe to Decoded Buddha if you want psychology-based storytelling that doesn't sell fear or blind belief. For deeper breakdowns and long-form thinking, visit our website, decodedbuddha.com. Links are in the description. And for short, daily insights on the human mind, follow us on Instagram, Decoded Buddha. In the next episode, we won't talk about leaving home. We'll talk about something more difficult, why walking away is easier than staying awake inside the system, and why Siddhartha's next step was not escape, but the most misunderstood decision of his life. Because Parivraja was not about running away from the world. It was about refusing to live unconsciously inside it.